They'll blanket you in Wi-Fi and profit off the radiation. Congregation collecting the people for that Satan. I keeps it blazing, cause I can read between the lines. I ain't blind, we unwind what they're really saying. Genetically modify what you're tasting. Loan you that cottage promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Programmed to crave the basics. Keep the beta in stasis. Pay the state, kid. You're in debt for being born. Messengers are mourn, just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed, disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of own nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer, cause they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Tonight on Rogue Ways, we have the pleasure of diving into the spooky and paranormal with one of the leading paranormal researchers on the West Coast. She is the founder and director of the well-respected San Diego Paranormal Research Society and has been featured in numerous media outlets, all while co-hosting the long-running Haunted Voices Radio and hosting the Afterlife Chronicles. Nicole Strickland, welcome to Rogue Ways, and how are you doing tonight?
Oh, first of all, thank you. It's an honor, and I'm doing great. It's awesome, right? You were on my show, now I'm on yours, so let's do it.
Yeah, I know. I'm so excited. If people didn't check that episode out, you can go back, I'm sure, and find it in the vaults on Afterlife Chronicles. That was a really fun episode we got to do a little while ago, and now we get to do some spooky stuff for Halloween, which I'm very excited about. That's sort of your wheelhouse, so we're going to dive into that today and hear all about it. But first, I do want to shout out Content Safe, where your content is safe no matter how many platforms you want your content on. Content Safe can support you, so please check them out, especially if you're in the biz and you want that. They're just so good. They get all of my stuff on all the different platforms it's out there on. Everybody knows there's like a million, whether you're on BitChute or Rumble or any of these things. So I love them for that. They make it so much easier. So shout out to them, and also to all of you supporters out there, all of you Rogue Warriors out there. Always want to send you my love and appreciation. It is you that make the dream happen. All of this stuff happens because of you, because you're here, because you comment, because you share, because you tell people about this show, because you're just awesome, because you've grabbed the audiobook on Audible. If you haven't yet, Signcurve of Aeons is an awesome story. It's so professionally produced, and it's such a good book, if I do say so myself, but especially if you like to listen to the books instead of read them. If you like to read them, you can grab them on my site. I do a little channeled inscription from your guides and allies to you in each of those books that you buy directly from me on the site at rogueways.org. You can also grab some powerful orgone there. You can book a one-on-one session with me there, whether you want to talk to your guides and your allies, do some healing, ceremonial work, or whatever else you're into. And we can do that together, or you can take a course from me on rogueways.thinkific.com. So many courses there. So many people dive into so many things, and I'm putting up more and more courses all the time. So check back regularly. And of course, you can always support the show if you haven't already by subscribing on rockfin.com/rogueways, at subscribestar.com/rogue-ways, or on Apple Podcasts, or on my favorite, rogue.locals.com. That's where the community is. Everybody gets to interact and post. And that's a fun place to be and support the show while doing it. All of my channeled messages are there, but they're also on Substack. So if you can also want to support the show, you can do it through substack.com/rogueways, or maybe it's rogueways.substack.com. I'm actually not sure how the URL works there. So you can click through on the link below wherever you're watching or listening, and you can also grab Nicole's links there. And Nicole, back to you with the pointless question of the episode. What? I should have told you this beforehand. What is the best body part and why?
The best body
like,
part and
what?
why? Oh my goodness.
I don't
Oh,
try
on
to-
the spot tonight.
I just do it. Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I'm not going to go with the part. I'm going to go with the body as a whole, including our
Ooh,
sixth sense. Yeah, that's my
nice.
answer.
I like it. Yeah. What
Yeah.
is the sixth sense to you? Is it like
I
intuition
think it's
and precognitive? Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's a combination. It's funny, I just talked about this on my show. I went solo on Thursday night. I think it's a culmination of our innate intuition and our innate psychic aptitudes. That's our sixth sense. And you know what? It's like, is it really all that paranormal at all? It's just, it's really part of it's a normal part of ourselves, but I just think people are just not obviously aware of it or tapped into it. So
Yeah, I was just going to
Yeah.
ask you that too, if you felt like everybody has it, or if it's something that has to be developed, or, some people just don't have it, or. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that we all have innate intuition and obviously psychic aptitudes, but I think it's everyone's not open to it, choose not to be open to it, or maybe they're that they can be open to it, but that's just it. Like being in this field for 20 some odd years, I've found mine just strengthening over time.
Mm.
So I think when you're exposed to it, it's funny. I liken it to a sport. The more you practice it and the more you're exposed to that sport, the better you will get. So I kind of, there's a parallel there. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool too. You're not only practicing it, but you're sort of I would think, at least, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, inviting, people with those same types of energies and aptitudes around you, and that probably strengthens that field in each other. And then also the places maybe that you're going and spending time and what's going on in those places might have something to do with it. Do you feel like that's part of it too?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. Absolutely. It's, when you make the conscious open to these abilities, the sky is the limit. So, then the locations and the people you're around, absolutely. And some people are just more, clairaudient than others. Some people are like multifaceted with all the clairs, clairsentience, more clairaudient. For me, it's more a combination of the claircognizance, clairvoyance, and the clairaudience that for me have strengthened over time. So I'm just letting it kind of evolve as they're supposed to evolve, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that you're sharing that with people right now because I think you're right. Everybody has it. And I think it's good for people to know that they might be stronger in some areas than others, but that you could also practice any of them that you don't feel like you're strong at if you wanted to go that way, or you could just stick with what's natural, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's like little exercises too. On my show, I talked about a couple of them that you can do. Like one of them that's helped me is just consciously picking like an item or a place or a thing or a person and then concentrate not on like what you're the analytical side of you, what it's thinking, but concentrate more on like the heart, like what the emotions and the senses you're getting like from your heart with that. And I've done that and I find that that's really helped me. So,
Oh, heart center, literally. That's all I'm ever talking about. So you're
right.
speaking my
I
language.
know. Yep. The
It's funny
language
too,
of the soul.
right. And it doesn't matter sort of which background people came from or how they got into this. It always kind of ends up going back to these universal truths that you're going to see over and over again, no matter which angle you're coming from, just like that heart centered approach. But speaking of that, how long have you always been into? Were you like the weird kid or what? Was this your childhood? Was it totally?
I'm total nerd. Love it. I embrace it. It's all good. Yeah, I've always been interested in the paranormal as far back as I can remember. I think I was about like 4 or 5 when I had my first experience. That was in Las Vegas, Nevada. I was born in Huntington Beach. So I'm in San Diego, California now. So Huntington Beach is a little beach town about an hour north of San Diego. So I was born there and then moved to Las Vegas with my mom and dad and had my first experience there. It was summertime at dusk, and I just saw like a morphing humanoid type shadow just kind of like travel between us. So I always had that interest in the paranormal, but I never, as a young kid, really knew exactly what that interest was. And so, getting older through middle and high school, I would read books on it and pretty much anything having to do with the paranormal, I would be very interested in. And then when I was at the University of Arizona undergrad, it was my senior year, and my maternal grandma called me the night before she passed, and then, of course, passed in the early morning. Her daughter, my mom, geez, hello. And interestingly too, my on my mom's birthday, which is very interesting. My mom and dad actually have
Wow.
the same birthday, October 25th. Needless to say, my mom called me on the 25th and said, I'm so sorry, grandma passed away. And so, of course, I came back out here to San Diego to spend some time. And then after that, of course, went back to college and I started experiences in my apartment that I did not have prior to her transition. And so I initially thought I'm in an upstairs unit, this is my neighbors, there's vibration, things like that. But then certain things were happening. The doorknobs would twist by themselves, and my grandmother used to go around at night making sure the doors were locked. One night I felt like a disembodied hand caress my face. It felt like it came from someone I knew and loved. But the culminating factor was actually on my bed. I was doing schoolwork, I think writing a paper or something. I saw her full-bodied apparition as if I'm looking at you, really
Wow.
solid. She looked about 10 years younger. She didn't say anything, but had a slight face, and she was wearing one of her favorite blue and white flowered house dresses. And it was weird because it looked as though she had a halo around her, as if a spotlight was shining. And so the whole experience lasted maybe a second, but it played out in just extreme slow motion. And so that
Yeah.
is what actually got me out of just, I call it the lab, reading about it and really getting out in the field after that point and investigating the paranormal. So I really credit her for that. And I've always wondered, was this whole experience a bereavement hallucination on my part, or really did she come and visit me? And I've pondered that. I've thought about it. I do think that she knew before I did that I was almost destined to be down this path, so to speak. So I really am indebted to her for that. So
What a beautiful
yeah, so
experience.
that's kind of what really got me out of the lab, and here we are, like
Yeah.
20 years later. Yep.
How cool. Well, I really would personally say the bereavement hallucination is the materialist way of describing a visitation from an actual consciousness, right? And that this is maybe just a different way of looking at it. But I love that how you describe the extreme slow motion of it too, because anyone who's been in a life-threatening situation or just a really sudden unexpected situation, which is what that was, that's novel
Right.
to your brain, time does slow down, it seems. But it's because it's so novel to your brain is like, every single detail, I must absorb this now. Right? I have to
Exactly.
understand,
Exactly.
possibly to protect myself, or at least to understand, in that case, just to understand. But it does, so you gathered every single detail of that and like seared it into your brain. That's really beautiful.
Absolutely. It is as seared as possible. And it's interesting that you made that correlation because yes, if you're, for example, driving on the road and, a car in front of you stops abruptly, for me, when I've had that happen, it plays out in slow motion, just like seeing her. And it was just, I can recount every single detail, the
Yeah.
lighting in the room, where she was. So pretty amazing.
Very, very beautiful. What a cool grandma to have to bring you over into the work you do now. So when you started doing this, how did you get into it, and how did that go? Because it seems like maybe now it's different, but not that long ago, I don't feel like there was as much saturation of this topic and this work as there is now.
No, I think it's definitely, I would say in the last like 10 or 15 years, absolutely, it's exploded. And so I actually researched online paranormal teams in Southern California. And so I found one up in LA that's now defunct, but I worked with them for a little bit just to, get my feet wet, ropes of what goes on during an actual investigation. So I worked with that team and then some spots on other different teams in Southern California. And then I always knew I would have my own team someday. And so then that came to fruition in 2009. And so that's when I founded the San Diego site. And so we've been around since 2009, and we primarily serve San Diego, Southern California. We concentrate more because there's all the different fields in the paranormal. We concentrate more on ghosts, spirits, haunted locations, as opposed to cryptozoology or UFO, for that matter. But if we get a client, for example, that emails us saying they have, maybe they've seen a cryptid or something like that, we obviously have a whole register of people that we can refer out to. But it's a lot of fun. I mean, investigating private homes and historical sites and businesses. It's amazing. Every case is new, and every case is an ample learning opportunity. So
Yeah. Oh, how
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And do you ever find that there's just sometimes those cases where those three things you listed are just intertwined? There's ghosts, there's cryptos, there's UFOs, and like these. Do you give those to the other people, or do you go in anyway and bring them with you?
That's a good point. I think this is just my thought. I almost wonder if there is some sort of connection between all these energies. I kind of that feels right to me. I don't know, but it's just something that feels right. But I mean, when it's when you do an investigation, oops, my light just moved. there's a lot that goes into it, from doing, preliminary work and going and doing a walkthrough and interviewing all the clients and getting eyewitness reports and, taking baseline photography and environmental monitoring readings and things like that to the actual investigation. Investigation is more like a one-time event at a place, or if you go just a few times, whereas a case study, which is preferred, is something that should be done, I think, at every location to really get an idea of what's going on. And that's if you're staying at a location for a long time, like as we are with the Rancho Buena Vista Adobe. So it's very multifaceted, a lot of things. But I'm trying to think if we've ever had a client that's actually, oh, geez, my light just fell. Never mind.
Oh, I was like, the ghosts are here.
Right. I'm just going
Don't blame it on them.
I'm going to pick it up right now and hopefully it'll stay. Sorry about that. Stay light,
No
will you?
worries.
And if not, stay. So yeah, I'm trying to recall if we've ever had a client that's actually reported. It's mostly more like ghostly spiritual activity at a place, as opposed to, oh my gosh, I'm seeing a ghost and I witnessed a UFO. I'm sure there have been other teams that have had that, but just not for us.
They're just mostly out at oh my god, now I can't remember the name of the place in Utah that everybody, Skinwalker Ranch. That's where.
Oh
right?
my god, yes. Oh, the stories with that. Oh my gosh, UFO sightings though. I mean, I'm kind of going off topic, but those are phenomenal. I've had a few in San Diego. I'm sure obviously you have stories with that too, but it's a very interesting feeling to see something literally from out of this world. And it's I often too at night, if I'm outside, I'll look up at the sky and I'll almost talk. I know this sounds weird, but I'll talk to them and just be like, I want to really get to know you more and, just connect. I guess I sound crazy, but
no, that's
yeah.
exactly what you should do. I mean, that's what I do and I've been doing for
See?
decades. So
I don't feel so bad.
Yeah, they hear you, and you'll hear them back too.
I think so.
If you tune in and attempt to do that, I think. This is kind of off topic, but it's just kind of wild, so I want to share it right now in the chat. There's someone called Crystal Clear, and Crystal says, "How strange! I was just listening to Nicole for the first time last night on another channel," and I'm like, "That is wild because we've had this."
Oh, I wonder if she was on. Yeah, I think you were on about like 3 months. I'm wondering if it was Haunted Voice. Yeah, it might have been Haunted Voices Radio. Todd and I actually interviewed Susan Catan Bernard and her crew from the Nevada State Prison. So yeah, that's awesome, right?
That was probably cool. Yeah, I was like, how weird for to see you before and then see you last night and then come here and see you again. That's very cool.
That's so cool.
That's gotta mean something. You two maybe have connections to make. Yeah, so speaking of seeing these UFOs and trying to talk to them and other things, what you've probably had just like hosts of awesome experiences and profound experiences, and I would love to hear some stories, whether they're cases you've investigated or things that have sort of happened to you separately or any of those.
Oh, I can share. I mean, my gosh, time wise,
sure
let me pick.
Just have books and books.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'll go to, let's do, because I mentioned it, Rancho Buena Vista Adobe, which is an 1850s land grant. So it's up in Vista, California. So San Diego is where I'm at, of course. And then Vista's sandwiched right Oceanside to the west and San Marcos to the east. And so there's two historic land. There's the Rancho Guajome and the Rancho Buena Vista Adobe. And so with the latter about 2011, and the city of Vista owns it now. So deeded to a Native American by the name of Felipe Subria in 1850 by Governor Pio Pico. And since that time, there have been all kinds of owners that have come through, some very famous pioneers and their families as well that either lived on the property or owned it. So the city in 1989, and it's a beautiful historic location. They have weddings there, 4th and 5th grade school programs there. It's just an absolute beautiful. So I approached the city of Vista back in 2011 about doing fundraising paranormal investigation tours on the property as a way to get some more money for the Adobe, and that's so because of the pandemic, but it's once a month on the third Friday 7 p.m. and 9:30, and so the money goes right back into the property. And so we take people in, do a little presentation at the beginning, and then we take them through the property and run it like an investigation. So we do a divining dowsing rod session in the kitchen. We do a collective electronic voice phenomena session in the sala, the main room there, and then in the major domo room we do an ITC, instrumental transcommunication session. So we've had, for some odd reason, the audio there is very prolific, specifically with ITC, to the point where we have captured very clear, historically relevant of people, past donors introducing themselves by name, situations like that. And so some of those audio captures you can listen to on San Diego Paranormal Research.com under audio. But in it's when we go in month after month, it's the same vocalizations, female and male, that come through. And what's interesting too is we've asked questions in English and we've gotten answers in Spanish or vice versa. Interestingly, in the major domo room back in, I'm thinking it was the late 20s or early 30s, we, Allie and I wrote a book on it, and Allie, friend and co-director, contributed to it as well. She's also a co-host as well of the tours. And we were doing research of the property at the Huntington Library. I think it's in San Marino, California. And so we were going through archives, and back in the 20s, I think late 20s, early 30s, when they were installing electric wiring in the walls, the electrician discovered skeletal remains in this major domo room. So to this day, no one really knows who that person may be. Allie and I, through our research and through not just archive research, but paranormal research, we've narrowed it down. We can't say for sure, but possibly a man by the name of Juan might have been a indentured Native American servant that one of the owners had on the property when she owned it. And so when we've asked, we've gotten several responses by a man identifying himself as Juan Gonzalez with accent and all. So
Wow.
it's a pretty incredible property. Visual sightings there, apparition sightings. We do have a lady in white. A lot of a lot of places do. Just amazing, amazing experiences all around. So if you're ever in the area, definitely stop by and see it.
Wow, how cool. Yeah, and it's nice that
Go-
people can go to that your site, San Diego Paranormal Research.com, and check those
Yeah.
things out too, because I know it's fun to be able to hear them. But what a rich collection of evidence that you're able to get just from this one location. And why do you think certain locations like that do have so much more?
That's a good question. There's all these different theories as to what may cause and or contribute to paranormal activity. I think history is a big foundation. So the more historical the place or the property, or for example, a ship like the Queen Mary, the higher chance of it having either paranormal activity or actually being haunted. So you can have a location that's haunted and may not. What I'm trying to say is you can have a location that has paranormal activity, but it may not be haunted. For me, a definition of a haunting is the phenomena that's occurring there has to have some sort of a tie or connection to that property historically, or whatever other connection. So I think history is a big part. I think psychokinesis, the people now, I mean, like we were talking about, the paranormal is so ingrained in pop culture and in everyday life that people want to experience and open up and have these encounters with ghosts and spirits and whatnot. So they're putting out that whole psychokinetic line, if you will, to the uh, other situations. Basically, what it's made out of. For example, if it's like with the Queen Mary, it sits in water. It's thought that ghosts are somewhat made out of an electrical ionic component, perhaps. And so water, as we know, is a natural conductor of electricity. Could be a part. Another thing with the Queen Mary is, the items constructed to build the ship. So different varieties of woods from all over the world. The quartz, other in the form of first and third class pool. The manganese bronze propellers. So items going in to build a property as well. And then I think, like I said, what the human element brings into it as well, I think is something that we need to explore more, because you have these locations that, and I've thought about this too, and this is kind of a long-winded response, but
I love it.
if you let's do Waverly Hills for an example. I just thought of it off the top of my head. The very first time a team went in, take the very first time a team went in there. So the very first time people ever stepped foot on the property to investigate it, all the way to now. By now, you would have had scores of different people, scores of different teams coming in. So it makes me wonder if a lot of the reported activity that's going on now is not false, but actually what the human element is causing. So if there's
Yeah.
suggestibility or bias or things like that, what's the percentage of it? Like if you see, look, where I'm getting at, it's hard for me to describe it. Where I'm getting at though is you're hearing of more and an increased amount of energy at these locations, more reports, more experiences. And I'm wondering if that's why, part of the reason as to why, because more and more people are going in and investigating, and it's the human element that's being brought into it. So it's just something
Yeah.
did response. My goodness, geez.
Oh no, it's perfect. And it's really fascinating because I don't know if you've ever heard of Rupert Sheldrake or the idea of morphogenetic fields, but it's similar to the concept of
Mhm.
egregores and magic, right? That we are
Right.
creating to some degree or perhaps entirely the world around us. And so that would tie in perfectly with what you're saying. If this many people are looking at that place, they're reading about it online, they're listening to EVPs from it, they're watching a movie about it, they're going there and visiting it, and they're all expecting this exact thing, then yeah, it's like you said, it doesn't make it. It just means those things are much more maybe easy to come about, or maybe even projected into that space as like almost echoes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then what you were saying with the building
That's a good
materials,
correlation.
I've never heard that before with the crystal or granite or whatever materials, mother of pearl and metals and things like that. Then that would definitely play in too. I love this answer that you've given.
Geology,
Yeah.
that's, and
Right.
even I forgot to mention too, even moon phases, solar geomagnetic storms, with that EMF, electromagnetic currents and all of that. So all of this
Yeah.
plays into effect, and it's why a lot of people like investigating the paranormal after a storm or shortly before one, because the ionic energy is disrupted and all of that. And then now around this time of year, the veil thinner. And so it's interesting, and I was just talking about this with someone else, that around this time of year, myself and of course many others in this field get a preponderance of people, saying they, have something in their home, or they're going through this experience and they're more attuned to this paranormal activity. And it makes me wonder and think about two things. Of course, the influence, of that. It's in pop culture, and it's that kind of that subliminal influence, but also you have to look at the veil being, thinner between our world and the next. And so people are just more attuned to these types of experiences. So I actually wrote a blog on that. Actually, I think it was last year, a couple of years ago. So it fascinates me, and all these
Yeah.
theories. And I think with the paranormal, I'm not so ever going to prove, that's not my goal. I'm not out to prove the existence of ghosts or spirits or anything like that. I'm not sure if we ever will. I think the mortal realm is probably not permitted to know exactly the universe until maybe obviously our turn to transition. That's a thought I have. But it's just fascinating to study, and the more pieces you can connect on an investigation or case study, if you can connect an intuitive psychic experience or a personal experience with some sort of science type data, whether it's an EMF spike or a temperature drop or something like that, the more correlations you have, the better. So
Yeah. How cool.
yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome you're bringing up that, moon phases and astrological energies and then time of year and all of these things too. It just makes me think about too these places that are such hot spots sometimes,
Right.
maybe even ancient places where they've placed, stones and whatnot, or
Ley
because of the
lines.
composition, right? The ley lines, the water that's flowing underneath there, and all of that sort of coming together to highlight. And then of course they'd be aiming it towards the full moon on this day, or towards the summer solstice or the spring solstice or whatever, to gather that energy
Exactly.
too. Yeah, like knows what could happen then.
It's so fascinating, and it's not cookie cutter. And have a cookie cutter approach, set up the same type of equipment, conduct the same types of methodologies. But and I think that's great. But if you're like, we have a historical case right now in San Diego that we're on, and it's pretty much been audio claims, so disembodied vocalizations, no sightings, nothing like that. It's basically been and disembodied types of vocalization, so going in with audio experimentation, things like that. So every case is different, but it's a passion, this field. It's ingrained within me. It's hard to explain. And when you find that and you something that your soul desires, the sky is the limit. You can attest to that.
Yes. I love it. I love people.
I mean,
Absolutely, yeah. And people who are passionate about what they do, I think, are better at what they do too, and they're led and
yeah,
guided more naturally to, what could come out of this, which is beautiful as well. Someone in the
right.
chat, Tea Leaves, is asking, do you see nature spirits being involved with any of this, or just in your own experience, even?
Excellent question. I feel, I think, and then see, especially at sites that, and in San Diego, there's a heavy Native American influence here. So there are a few sites that I went to, whether it's on or just visiting, where you can feel almost as if nature is speaking to you. And so I can't say for sure that I've actually seen with my own eyes an absolute nature spirit, but feeling the energy. I believe in elementals. I believe in the fae and all of that. Very fascinating creatures. I've never actually encountered. I've talked to people that have actually encountered, fae people or gnomes or entities like that. I haven't. Sense it's hard to put in words, but when you're at a location and you feel very nature, it's almost, I think that's a sign right there that there's something there that is communicating with you for sure.
Yeah. I love that. Being able to, that's like one of the things I crave, is just to be out in nature and just feel that. It's
Right?
like so relaxing. I don't,
I
because it's
don't
just,
we don't.
oh,
It's just,
yeah.
and I love
Yeah.
the woods, and it's funny because San Diego, I'm 10 minutes from the beach, and I love the beach. Don't get me wrong, I love water, but there's something about woods to me that I've always liked ever since I was a kid. So
Mm. Yeah, we need it. We need more of it. We are nature, and we don't spend enough
we
time with
are.
nature.
I
um,
agree. I agree.
yeah. What other cases or experiences do you want to share with us?
So we've investigated a lot of historic sites in San Diego, from the Star of India to the Berkeley ferry boat, part of the Maritime Museum of San Diego to the William Hughes. Now it's called the House. Many places in Old Town as well. And even, up throughout California, USS Hornet, Preston Castle, for example. I'm also a part of the Ghost Research Society, which is headed up by Dale Katzmarek. I've been able to investigate a lot of Midwest locations, such as Waverly. It's phenomenal. The Queen Mary, of course, is another case study of mine that I've been doing for, and the experiences that I've had there are just absolutely incredible. And I've talked to so many on in, not necessarily being a cynic, but they're more of a healthy skeptic. I've met cynics as well that'll go into the ship and they'll be like, nope, I don't believe in ghosts. Nope, I won't see one. They will walk out of there with such a profound encounter, and they're a believer from that point on. I've talked to at least 10 people where that's happened. Just phenomenal encounters. I don't know if
Love
you
to
want a
hear. Yeah, I'd
couple.
love to hear some of yours from the Queen Marys.
Yeah, so let me go. I mentioned the Queen Mary, the one that is very powerful, and it's back when I was saying connect those different experiences. The more pieces of the puzzle that fit, the better it is, and you're able to see patterns. So this was at the Davis Horton House, which is down in Gaslamp. ago. And so this was I think our second or third investigation of the property. And what was interesting is I didn't really know. I knew a little bit about the history, but I did not know that William Heath Davis had a daughter. So when I was entering the home right before I stepped foot, I got in my an image of this little girl. She was maybe about, I would say, 12 or 13, beautiful brown hair, and I didn't see. Again, it was with my mind's eye, and so I walked in, and then I sat my equipment bags down, and I happened to just glance at this black and white historical at the base of the staircase, which had a little girl that literally matched my mind's eye saw. So I went up to it, looked at it. I asked the docent, and I said, "Who is this?" And said, "Well, that's Mr. William Heath Davis's daughter, Lillian Davis." And I just took note of that. So throughout the night, throughout our investigation, doing electronic voice phenomena sessions and up cameras and things like that, doing different types of experimentation. We were in the parlor one night. Sudden, one of the investigators, little girl, he didn't call her by her name, but he said, "Little girl," to us, disembodied out loud. A little girl respond, but we could not hear exactly what was said. And then outside, there were a couple of people walking drunk, and so they kind of like screamed in this stupor, and you could hear from inside the house. And it was just the three of us in there with the docent, and we were all sitting down in the parlor at this time. You could absolutely was coming from inside the house as opposed to outside. And so this little girl, response to the two people outside, said, "What was that?" So fast forward a little bit, sat a camera, static infrared camera on the stairs looking up. And when you look up, the children's door is on your right. That door is extremely heavy. So the video captured it was, I forget, before this audible voice phenomenon or if it was after, but you see in the video opening up almost by itself. And so, of course, we tested when we reviewed the video, and we tested it. We went up there. We made sure, no windows were open at the top, conditioning vents. No one was walking around to cause vibration, nothing outside that vibration. So and the door was super, super heavy. So we could not understand why twice it seemed as though someone was trying to push the door open. So again, I don't know if this was about 10 minutes prior or after, but we did get a response to the investigator's question earlier, or said, "Little girl, you can come in here and talk with us." So upon review of the audio, you can clear a response of, "I am trying to talk to you. My name is Lillian."
Wow.
After that, the two people outside were recorded, and then she responds, "What was that?" I mean, just such intelligence on the part of this entity. So there you go. An intuitive experience matched by an actual visual sighting, which was captured on camera, backed up as well by an audible voice phenomenon or disembodied voice, which was heard at the time. And so we were, interestingly, we were on My Ghost Story. That was a really, really fun experience there. I mean, so many. Queen Mary. I mean, I've had some of my most profound encounters from
Wow.
touch to having your hair pulled to seeing full bodied apparitions, figures to hearing vocalizations. I mean, I've gone on board and I've spent hours on board this ship. So I've gone on board, and then while it's usually within like the first 5 or 10 minutes, I'll hear, voices that say, "Nicole's here," or "Hi, Nicole." And I'm looking around and there's like no one there. So I don't know if you've been to Waverly Hills too. Waverly Hills is, it was an old a sanitarium where they housed tuberculosis patients, and over, I forget the exact number, but something like 60 some odd thousand people passed away there. The shadow figure is insane. Like, you can just be standing in a hallway and you could see morphing coming out of the walls, moving, peering through the walls on the other side. It's incredible.
Wow. No,
So
I've never even heard of
definitely
Waverly
go
Hills.
there.
Yeah.
Have you
What?
been?
No, I haven't been. I've never been to any, like, I've never gone looking for ghosts. Like, I have enough stuff at that I've never gone and looked at anything, but
Yeah.
I think about it. Like I think about how cool it would be to go to some of these places and see what I feel and pick up on because I've definitely
Yeah.
done that just out like not knowing if it was supposedly a haunted place or not, right? So
Right.
then if it really was, and like you said, there's all of this knowledge about it and there's all of this energy into it, it'd be like way easier to have that. It'd be really interesting to do and I would like to. But
Yes.
I'm a little bit wary of the like sanitariums and especially the insane asylums because I don't want to feel
Oh,
that
yeah.
energy. Like I just,
No, I
like it's sad. I'd have to do some real good grounding and protection before I went in because I just feel stuff so powerfully
see, I
sometimes.
do.
So you're
Yeah, I do
strong,
too.
yeah.
But it does tug at your heartstrings though.
It really
It does,
does.
and you have to, mentally prepare for that. And it's hard to know
No,
that, there's energy there that might be stuck or left behind. And some of it's residual,
Yeah.
but with these like, Trans Allegheny, for example, these prisons even, I think are
Mhm.
even tough. And I've investigated a few of those and it's tough. And that energy can be very, very strong. So, and regardless if you're going to a euphoria or a place like a prison or a sanitarium where people were sick or each other, it's always important to, be grounded and be physically well before you go out in the for work. So
Have a
spiritual,
powerful
physical, emotional
protection.
grounding. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Very smart. Very good advice
yep.
too. What do you think about shadow figures? Like in your opinion, what are they?
Oh, good question. I know everyone has their own thoughts on them. I think that so there's two. So you may see a figure, partial, a full body shadow figure, partially manifested shadow figure. I think in some cases it can be just a partial state. And so, you can't see the skin color, you can't see the hair color or the clothing or anything like that, just because the energy isn't as and they appear in shadow silhouette form. I think there's what we call the classic shadow figure that's usually seen as extremely tall, feet. Some people see him, her, if you will. I associate more with male, but like a long, dark cape with like a wide brimmed hat. Some people see like figure. It's thought that maybe they're here, maybe from a different dimension, maybe associated with alien species, MIB. They're here to observe the living. Some people think they're malevolent. It's hard to know. I can't say that I've actually encountered an actual classic, but I've seen pictures that resemble that. Two of them actually on board is interesting.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
one
know.
of the haunting stories I heard about the Queen Mary was a bit darker than some of the ones you shared tonight. But when I was 12, maybe I was even 11, I saw a shadow figure. I had a constant shadow figure presence in the room I had moved into in a newer house that it wasn't a
Mm,
new house, but a new house for us that we were staying in suddenly. And he had that exact, he's tall, he had the coat, he had the hat. And this is what 1991. So no internet. No one had ever told me a
yeah.
story about a shadow person. Like I had nothing to go off of. I just saw that constantly and it freaked me out. It was not a good time for me.
Well, I
So,
can imagine.
but
My God, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I was young and
D-
I was living in a basement. Where this was happening too. So I was like, it
Always
was
the
not fun.
basement.
It's
Oh my
always, yeah.
gosh.
And then
So
I
did
couldn't
it
really
finally
talk
go
about
away
it.
or?
Well, this is actually when I met one of my first spirit guides and he was came to help protect me from this. So this shadow figure didn't actually ever do anything bad to me. It just terrified me because I was like, what? And it didn't feel good to me. Like it felt weird, foreign, and nefarious, but I don't actually have any evidence that it was, so I'm willing to admit that. But then I, got this spirit guide who was with me in my dreams and my waking hours all of a sudden, and he
Oh,
would
that's
like
great.
make me feel better and protect me and I mean that's a good outcome from that, right? Like
Absolutely.
brought me that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good point you brought up too, because a lot of times, we can go into a location, feel intimidated by a certain entity, but maybe it's not the intent of that entity, what we're ascribing to it. But then again, you always want to trust your instincts and all that. So
Yes. It's still okay to
interesting.
have boundaries.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Geez, like it another one, because I stay on board there. Of course, you have to shower when you stay on board, right? Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. When I'm in the shower, nope. Nope.
Yeah.
I'll be done in about
Not
20
allowed.
minutes. Until then, nope.
Right. It's a very good boundary
So,
to have.
yeah.
Yeah, that's very it's cool to think about shadow figures in that way too, like you said, where it's like partially manifested, it hasn't fully, and that's a
Mhm.
little bit different. And so
Right.
especially if it doesn't fit some of those other classic, aspects of it, you can at least go, okay, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, right? To take all of this
Exactly.
into account is good.
Exactly.
Um
Absolutely.
what are some of the methodologies and the preferred practices, because I know there's some things that people do that aren't necessarily you know maybe the best way to do it in your opinion, and so that'd be fun to hear about. But I also, and I don't know if these are connected, but in my mind they are. I wonder if you ever bring a psychic, like a, I know that you have your own psychic abilities, but like an official psychic with you to do any of these things, or do you think that's not sort of necessary or helpful, or
Yeah, I was actually gonna bring that in. I'm glad you asked it. So every team is different, and so some teams are more on the psychic side, where they go in and that's what they are. They're a team of mediums, whether it's just a psychic medium, spirit medium, evidential medium, and they go in and that's what they do. Other teams are purely, and a lot of people don't like the word science. Some people consider it a pseudoscience. I think it's kind of in between a pseudoscience and a real science. I think we're aiming more towards scientific, but some people are teams are more scientific in their approach and they do not use psychics. I right in between. I like to blend both the science side, the metaphysical side. So yeah, we have brought on people that have come sometimes depending on their modalities. Some people, we have one that does a lot of remote viewing as well. So we may just send, and then she reads those, and usually it's just myself, and I'll said, but I won't share it with anyone else just for bias until after the investigation. So I use like all three of those. Preferred, I mean, like I said earlier, it can be cookie cutter where you go in and you want to do your environmental readings. You want to take baseline and even readings of EMF and temperature, radiation, and there's like the EI meter for logger. So that will data log all your EMF and your temp readings. I don't know if it does radiation. I think it does vibration as well. So it'll data log that for you. And then at the end, you can go and look at the graph and see, okay, well, at this time we had this experience. What was the temperature? What was the EMF? Things like that. Environmental monitoring, setting up cameras, whether it's static camera or a surveillance system. Audio, I love audio, so I do a lot of electronic voice phenomena sessions in different parts of the location. ITC, instrumental trans communication, which is similar to EVP, but it's real time communication between our world. And so there's different methods. There's just the standard conversational question answer, and then what method, which I've used as well. So that's done to try to create bias and all of that. So you have one person that's blindfolded, can't hear the questions that are being asked, but they're listening to the feedback of the device as it scans through the
um,
AM FM band. So it's just a different method. It was actually developed by researchers at my gosh, it was in Estes Park, Stanley Hotel, Colorado, hence the
oh
name
wow, yeah.
Estes method. So yeah, so
Oh.
audio, I love audio experimentation. It's just my favorite. I think audio is the most prolific, and then of course blending in divining rod sessions, working with pendulums, things like that. So again, if your location is mostly visual, to set up different types of cameras, get some thermal reads on there, maybe set up some IR cameras, your surveillance monitoring system. But if it's basically maybe you don't need all those cameras. You can just go in and see what EVPs and IT tips that you get. So it all depends on like what's reported and what you feel based on the location. So
Well, it's awesome that you have so much experience with what you have done in this field, that you can use all these different methods, and you can kind of see which work and where and how and why, and you just have this bag of tools you get to dip into, which I'm sure makes your results very effective as well.
Yeah.
Someone in the chat was asking if you've ever seen orbs.
Yes. Oh, when you see them with your naked eye, that's huge because a lot of orbs that, especially on digital cameras, can usually be explained away. Obviously, we've heard this by dust, things like that, or just some sort of pixelation issue with the camera. They're very common digital cameras, but if you're getting them more on 35 millimeter or Polaroid, then that's a little interesting. But if you with your own eye, I mean, I've seen them, and they can almost look 3D of a wall or piece of furniture. If they have, for me to identify if something is just natural versus maybe spiritually inclined, I look for a sense of intelligence to it. Is it moving in erratic fashions? Maybe not air current. If it's going a linear A to B and you have the air conditioner on, well, that's explaining it. Is it dust? And there's a test you can do with your cell phone. If you turn the light on your phone, aim it, you can see the little dust particles. And if you snap photos, obviously they're going to show up. Case up in Fallbrook where the client was seeing all these orbs on her security cameras. And so we were able to determine that obviously most of those were dust and things like that. But if it has an intelligence to it where it's kind of just flying in its own pattern, does D is it colored? That's independent from sun flares or things like that. Some people will see like numbers and letters inside, maybe see a clear face inside and the orb. So those are all if it has all those, I would say, well, maybe it's possibly spiritual. I'm not going to sit here and say that all orbs on camera are. I think some of them are, but the majority of them can be explained away. But if you see one with your naked eye, that's huge. Definitely.
Yeah.
Stories of that small beach ball size to little like baseball sized orbs. So
Yeah, they're so fascinating. Someone in the chat just said they had a car-sized orb once, which I've never actually heard of that. But my best orb experience came through a wall and plopped into someone's head, and then they started channeling that intelligence, and I was like, whoa. So then I knew what orbs were suddenly, for me at least, right? That means they're the ones that are real are these. That's a consciousness. That's like a Merkaba or something, like that's their little vessel.
Absolutely. That's a good account. Yeah, there's actually, well, I just got back from the OC Paracon, and one of the guys was speaking on the Greystone Mansion, and he showed a clip where I guess it's one of the little girl spirits that was there, and he was trying to talk with her, and then he had toys laid out. One of the toys went off, and then you see an orb shoot up straight into the ceiling. That's something that you would pay attention to and say, well, that's probably paranormal. Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and to be skeptical in the right way, right? Where you say like, yeah, I'm open to believing, but I'm also going to look at all the possibilities because I don't want to just say everything is this and then, then my evidence isn't really evidence after all and we're not really getting anywhere. But to be able to see something like that and say, yeah, that's definitely something's going on here,
That's
right?
it.
And what's really fascinating, I had someone on recently, and they were showing pictures of orbs they had caught that had you could see the faces in them. And I had never really seen that closely any orbs with faces in them before. But then I thought, well, that so much matches up with my experience of that specific one, at least, that this is a consciousness and they would have maybe some representation of themselves, whether it's a dog or a person or something else, right?
Absolutely. I've actually talked with a couple of people who have identified and said the faces in this orb look just like my grandma. I forget who it was, or just like, for example. Wow. So in those cases, yes, completely fascinating. Completely.
How cool. Yeah, and especially to see them in connection with people who are channeling, to see that come in and out and see the channeling start and stop. You're like, well, geez. I mean,
that's amazing. Wow.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love talking about this stuff and I love thinking about all the different things it could be, what's actually going on. And that you have so many stories and experiences with all different kinds of stuff is really cool. Do you have any crypto experiences? I know you said that's not really your purview, but
Oh my,
have you touched in with any of that?
no, I've actually had a cryptid experience that I can say with, definite certainty, okay, yes, I saw Bigfoot, but I would love to audition. I've talked with people
Yeah.
that have encountered him, like full-blooded, and what they describe is it, and then when you listen to the tone of their voice and watch their body language, that they're telling the truth.
Yeah.
So, phenomenal. I mean, I've listened to, audio, Bigfoot vocalizations, the samurai chatter, things like that. But I mean, I honestly, I encounter Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Like, I think it
I
would be
know.
a very interesting experience.
Every time we go in the
Um,
woods, we're like, okay, Bigfoot, like if you want, we're here. We think you're cool.
oh, right.
But
Oh, I
so
love the
far,
woods.
yeah. So far he hasn't stepped out in the daylight yet. It's going to
Not
happen,
yet.
perhaps.
Right. Some people, there
Someday.
are some videos of people seen him in daylight, but again, some of them are faked and you can tell. So it's really sad, but maybe one day. One day.
Yes. One day, I hope. Well, I would love to hear about some of your books. I know you're an
Oh,
author, and we haven't even touched on that yet.
uh, I've always liked books, but the very first one I did was in 2009. Field Guide to Southern California Hauntings. I've grown a lot as a writer since then. I actually took it out of print because then I came out with San Diego's Most Haunted with Schiffer. And so I'm going to probably go back of the Field Guide book at some point. Of course, my love for the Queen Mary. I have 3 of those. The Haunted Queen of the Seas, the Living Legend of the RMS Queen Mary. That's basically his overview and paranormal overview of the ship. So I get into hotspot locations, the history, of course, but hotspot locations, some of the resident energies there. The ship gave me permission to publish some of the visitor accounts from the late 19th present. So that's that book. And then I wanted to delve more into into paranormal encounters on the ship spanning, I don't know, since 2005. And so then I wrote Spirited Queen Mary, Her Haunted Legend. And so that's a sister book in a sense. And so that delves more information about the resident energies on board. I discuss more in depth the many encounters I've had and that sort of thing. And then I wanted to kind of step out of the paranormal a little bit and do more of a historical book. And so came out with RMS Queen Mary, Voices from Her Voyages. And that took about 2 years to write. Labor of love, of course. I had to interview former crew, passengers, war brides, people who sailed on the Queen Mary, and they shared their memories and their sailing accounts. So that was a really great book to write. And then, of course, with the Rancho Buena Vista, I think I met Spirits of Rancho was out by Haunt America, Arcadia Publishing. And then also I have one that's coming out January. I'm actually moving into the self-publishing route with this one. And so that's the Afterlife Chronicle connection between life, death, and beyond. And so that'll be out, let's see, December, January. And then Marie D. Jones, Denise Agnew, and I are working on an anthology on women, and that's with Black Spot Books, and that'll come out 2024. So I love to write, which is awesome.
Yeah, we have a lot in common, actually. Which
I
is
know, right?
Yeah. Oh, that
Totally.
sounds like a really cool book. I love anthologies, so I'm definitely going to have to get that one when it comes out. And all of those sound
Yeah.
fascinating. I know they're all also, ways people can just learn more about, what you do and what you experience and the types of things that go on if they're not already familiar. But you also teach classes, is that right?
I do actually. So paranormal investigation classes, obviously, for those and learning what we do. I actually have one coming up with San Diego Oasis. So all kinds of classes with that for adults. This is the 3rd year they've asked me to do it, so I'm assuming I got okay reviews because then they wouldn't have asked me back.
Pretty good.
I'm
Yeah.
hoping, but yeah, so that's coming up October 17th, and it's interesting because it's a site in San Diego, but it's also a hybrid class, so it'll be virtual for, I believe, New York residents as well. And then so I just do those classes as they come up, and then I present a lot as well. So I have about 12 or 13 different presentation topics on the afterlife and paranormal that I do as they come up, whether it's conferences, libraries, places like that. So I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun.
And you do a bunch of radio shows like your own and then co-hosting and other and everything. So tell people where they can find all of this and more.
Yeah, so my radio show, The Afterlife Chronicles, is on the WB network. That's WLTKDB.com. That's on Thursday nights, 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern. And of course, it's live, but it's, archived on pretty much all the major audio listening. And then along with Todd Bates, Todd is the station owner manager of WLTKDB. Him and I co-host Haunted Voices Radio. Was on Tuesday nights. Now it's Friday nights at 8 Pacific, 11 Eastern. Like I said last night, we just talked about the Nevada State Prison with Susan Catan Bernard and her crew. Let's see. So WLTKDB.com. It's also on Facebook. And then, I'm on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Strickland, Twitter. Let's see. Nicole is my Twitter handle. And then, of course, on Facebook. And then San Diego Paranormal Research.com and author NicoleStrickland.com. So that's pretty much it. I'm not on TikTok yet, though. I don't know how that's going to happen. If it will, maybe. We'll see. Maybe with ASMR. Kind of fun.
People are
I've heard it. I know. I've heard it.
Yeah. People are really like anti-TikTok because they're like, it's Chinese and they're stealing all your data. And I'm like, well, I've had Chinese apps for years and I'm sure they stole all my data a long time ago. And I think every app I've had has been stealing my data all a long time. Not personally, not too concerned about it. It would be awesome to have nobody stealing any data no matter what apps you use, but I just don't think we've lived in that world for quite a few years now. So
I would have to agree, yes.
And I think TikTok needs people like us bringing some messages that aren't just sort of like vapid, empty, whatever. And I mean, I'm a little judgmental about that. I get it, but we have a whole other side of reality to bring to the TikTok universe.
I do agree with that. Yes. So maybe kind of thinking about how that's gonna be. I don't know. So we'll figure it out.
I love it. Well, I did want to ask you, I actually forgot, we talk sometimes about how things will get colder. You talked about the temperature fluctuations that you can measure with your instruments and coinciding with messages often or other experiences. Why do you think sometimes it gets colder? What do you think is happening to make that happen?
That's a good question. The prevailing theory with that is that energies are using and drawing the heat from the environment, thus creating a cold spot. There may be something completely different to that equation, but that is the prevailing theory. I mean, there's also hot spots that people can get too. Those are just not as commonly reported as the cold spots. So I think that there is something, physics, related going on physically with that. But again, that's the prevailing theory. But I'm trying to think. I've thought about this too. Maybe there's just something else going on, but I'm just not sure with that theory because it seems like it makes sense. It seems like there's some sort of different energy transfer of something going on. So
yeah,
you get that a lot.
I feel that too. Yeah.
Do you have a theory for that?
No, I kind of felt that way too, but it just. And maybe, again, it's our own projection, just like the shadow person thing or that whole thing that it just feels sort of nefarious to me where I'm like, why are you stealing the energy? Like that's
right. I know.
Like, this is my energy or, my space and like go find something else but who knows what's happening. For me, at least, it does seem like the times I've experienced it was less happy feeling energies, and the times I've experienced energies that are just calm and happy and positive, that doesn't happen. So something with it for me feels like less good.
Yeah, I don't see. It's weird. I mean, I've also thought like, is it just are we thinking? But what's interesting is that you have the ambient temperature thermometers that are telling you a 2 to 4, degree drop in temperature. So, I mean, for me, I've experienced those types of situations in places that have consistent types of paranormal activity, not just, fleeting here and there. They're actual, just like the Queen Mary, for example, it's just consistent all around in terms of its energy. Places like prisons, sanitariums, theaters, libraries, that's a whole nother story. Those are great to investigate. Wow.
Weird. That's so interesting. I've not heard that before.
Yeah, we've done a few. It's it's pretty interesting.
Why do you think
So,
libraries specifically?
oh, I don't know. I mean, I just think about all the people going in there and energy imprinting on items. Well, think of all the books on the shelves and all the hands and all the energy and all the people that actually held those books. So it's a transfer of energy from one person to another. Okay, this person checks out a book, this person checks out the same book. Well, are they imprinting anything of their energy? Perhaps, I don't know. But that's just kind of my thought with that as well. Yeah, we've done a few here in San Diego, Chula Vista Library, and then Escondido Public Library, so we've done, like, I think 2 or 3 there.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, I've just never quite
Yeah,
heard of that as an area that would have high amounts of experience or phenomenon. Um, so that's fascinating. I
yeah,
love that.
it is, it
Libraries.
really is. Every
Yeah, I
place is
just love
just so
being
unique.
in libraries myself. So
I do too, right? I do too. I love being in libraries. I just love the quietness and all of that.
yeah. Well, Nicole, this is a maybe random seeming question to sort of start to close things out with, but a
Yeah.
lot of people feel like we're in this time where these types of things are increasing, or psychic energies are increasing, or things are changing wildly. What are your thoughts on that? Like this time period in general, what might be going on, and what people should know or think about that?
Think well, like I said earlier, I think there's an influence now. It's more openly talked about. It's infused in our culture, whether we like it or not. But I think beyond that, there's like an ascension going on. And I think some people are open to that. Others may not know what's going on. And potentially this could be why there's a lot of issues in today's world. And if you look at the symbolism of the pandemic, yes, okay, there's a pandemic, but what does that symbolize, right? It's symbolizing us and the need to be more get together and respect one another. So I think that there's something cosmic going on that's creating this layer of ascension for us. And some people, like I said, are more open to it. Others are, I think, fighting it maybe without knowing they're fighting. So that's just my thought. I've actually talked with a couple of other people that have mentioned that as well. So I don't know. Those are
Yeah,
just my thoughts on it.
that's fascinating. What suggestions would you give people for best navigating the changing energies?
I would, trust your intuition, listen to your heart, as opposed to maybe your ego. And of course, the ego serves a purpose. Don't get me wrong, but listen to that. Pay attention to what you is telling you. Synchronicity. Pay attention to those. The different symbolism that you're seeing, synchronicities, situations like that, and just kind of go and follow your wisdom and your heart. It's going to lead you down the wrong road.
Beautifully said. I know that you already told us about all the things you do and where people can go, but is there anything you have coming up or any other events or just stuff that we didn't talk about that you want to tell people about?
I
I know
think
you
so. I
just
think I
finished a
pretty
major
much.
event, so
Yeah, the OC Paracon, I'll briefly touch on that. So Henry San Miguel and then Unearthing the Supernatural organized it. And so they had a virtual event last year, but this year was the actual first site paranormal convention in Anaheim. And so that was fun. Left last Saturday morning here in San Diego at like 6 a.m., got up there about 7, and it was days of speakers and vendors and classes. So it was a lot of fun. So he's definitely going to be doing one next year. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm trying to
oh,
think
very
anything
cool.
else. No, just a lot of radio shows and the upcoming class and but sometimes things come middle to late October that you just don't know about. That's sometimes happens. So
It's that season, so I
it's
understand
that
things
season.
things are in flux.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you have so
Mhm.
much going on. You have so much that people can go connect with and even hear and see some of the evidence you've gathered, like you talked about. So that is so cool.
Mhm.
And what are your final thoughts or words that you want to leave people with? I know you already gave us a good dose of wisdom a second ago, but I'll give you another opportunity to share some final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much reiterate that. And I think, and based on my experiences, we're all different and we all have different experiences. But based on my experiences and what I've in the last 20 years, I think that there's a very beautiful connection between afterlife, and I've heard so many beautiful stories from other people. So just be open to it. And I think that death is a hard situation, but I know for myself, and I'm speaking for me personally, that losing a loved one, it's easier for me being in this field because I know that I don't think we ever really die. We just evolve and move on, and that connection um, between the living and the afterlife is very strong. So if you lose someone that's very important to you, I know it's hard to have that physical loss, but that connection, that soul to that person is eternal and will be there forever. And that's something that when you grasp onto that, it will help you tremendously in the grieving period. So that's just for me personally.
It's beautiful. It's so true. And it's such a good thing for people to know and connect with. So thank you for sharing that. And fellow travelers of the
Sure.
path, this has been your analog electric concentric dose of wisdom according to the paranormal queen, Nicole Strickland. Nicole, thank you so much for sharing with us tonight.
Thank you for having me. It was your show. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so grateful. Yeah, and people can go check out the other show we did together in this one, and I'm sure we'll have you back again because you're so fun to talk to, and you have so much
Absolutely.
experience,
Likewise.
so we'll do it again.
Likewise.
Awesome. Well, life and the afterlife, it is all the same in the end. They are two sides of one coin, and the one coin is your soul and consciousness. It never ends. That level of you that is within every moment, conscious and unconscious, that you've never been, that you've ever lived. You'll ride with it to eternity, and the trails of evidence of this fact have been left throughout our reality for you to remember exactly who and what you are, and in the highest hope, why you've chosen this ride. Find your purpose and your presence, and until you do, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.
Nasty motherfucker with a hook and a sickle. Brought to you advertisement, bone plated nickel. Fire rate, automatic smash from the get-go. Snack on the whack, fermented flesh disco. Abracadabra, archaic altars don't slabber. Hey, making jabbers, flip reality backwards. Hunting rap nerds, bodyguard collected actors. Munitions are famished, let them feast upon the dapper. Bloody bibs and muddy kicks, feasting on amygdalas. Iron fist, tyrant shit, APO will rip you up. The rhyme rainmaker, vein style backbreaker. Gang is depleted, uranium satellite lasers. Cloaked in anonymity, I know you never heard of me. No rusted tools used for Crowley style surgery.
Dissect a whole set, God body. God taught me to dissect the whole body. When it gets sloppy, I'ma get there. Rhymes rare like steak, get crushed like Christ to create 52 states. And it's Baghdad, dust to towels, no rags. Straight melt dash, dust to ash. Turbans while the niggas perkin'. It's on purpose. My service touches the sun's surface, and rainbows touch serpents. My light all night shines so bright. I'ma stop for eons. Hollywood's for peons, cause they try to copy the same shit we on. Hey, I ain't done yet. Lungs depleted and can't breathe, can't believe it. Trying to seek it while trying to peep it. It's a secret. Now you're nobody. Label somebody. Trying to claim John Gotti. It's yours truly, God body.